If we can help kids
Recording in progress.
If we can help kids get back and forth on the bus, if we can help them through passing periods, if we can help be there during the lunch hour, wherever we can help alleviate some of the attention a teacher has to give out of their committed time, I think would be helpful. And then of course, we're always open to hearing what else they need. I'll tell you one quick example that has come to our attention. Some schools have teachers' lounges where the teachers go to eat their lunch. And some of those lounges are really not of the quality you might want them to be. And so simply stocking a teacher's lounge with comfortable furniture, a nice TV, a refrigerator, a microwave that works, and how about water and snacks that they don't have to purchase. So again, doing things that are seemingly small, but I think would go a long way to show our teachers how much we support what they do.
Now, are there ways that we can support and assist the NIA project?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always donate. Financial support is fantastic. You can go to our website, which is the neaprojectkc.org, the neaprojectkc.org. And we are actually in the process of putting together a volunteer corps. We've just learned that oftentimes in our community, there are groups and organizations doing different things with our children, and they're always asking for volunteers. And unfortunately, Black folks are not showing up. And we need, just like we need Black people to represent in the classrooms, we also need them represented out in the community when folks are working with our children. And we have some incredible retirees that are still vital. In our neighborhoods, we have lots of retired lunch ladies and plumbers and a variety of different careers. And we want to make it easier for them to know about things that are going on in the community and come out and spend a couple of hours making a difference with our children.
Thank you so very, very much for that. And it is important to recognize that while you are talking about Black girls and women, we who are men must know that we have roles to play as well. So you are not only appealing to women, you're appealing to all of us, and we appreciate that. Now, as I go to Brother Bell and Sister Bruce, if there were ways that you wanted to point towards where we who are stakeholders in education can be more helpful, or even directly to Raytown or Brookside, what appeal might you make to those involved in your school or those who might want to become involved?
I think from a, so, as people say, there's levels to this, right? So yes, I think on the very most basic primary level, I think teachers and parents have to be engaged with each other, right? Have open lines of communication, have parents be aware, and to some degree, as much as they can, be participatory in what's going on in that scholar's classroom and that scholar's learning environment, whether that be just overlooking homework, sending emails, asking for status updates, making sure they're present for parent-teacher conference, or leveraging technology so that we don't have to just wait for that one periodic time to conference. We can conference whenever. But then also, I think too, the talents and the abilities that parents have could definitely be yielded toward making the learning environment more cool to kids, allowing them to feel that what they're doing matters and is being paid attention to. And I think opportunities to allow dialogue and interaction, with the teacher and the parent, without, taking away from instructional time as much as possible. I think those things go a long way. And then, having community events, weekend events, the school day and the weekday, the work week is tough for parents, right? As well as other educators. But I think if we're committed to the relationship building and we're committed to the achievement of our scholars, we can leverage some extracurricular opportunities and some weekend time to just relationship build.
Thank you. Rosalind Bruce, please, how can we make your job more efficient?
Well, kind of
piggybacking off of what Mr. Ed said, is pretty much the same thing. With our school, we are a leader in me school, so our school also, we don't have transportation, so it's required that parents pick up and drop off their children. So I would say I would want help with getting parents more involved and not just using like our carpool situation where they can avoid talking to the teachers. Actually, like, encourage the parents more to come in and actually talk to the teachers, get more involved. We do have a lot of parents that are involved, but I feel that we need more of our community to be involved. So even if it's like coming up and reading with kids during the day, or having a special event during the evening and the afternoon after school, coming and teaching a new skill. Because I know in our community, we have a lot of entrepreneurs. We have a lot of people that have skills that they did not get when they went to college. So, and our kids need to have that around them. They need to be exposed to that, because our children aren't going to be ready for these careers when they get out there, because there are a lot of STEM careers and they don't get a lot of hands-on access to materials and things in classroom because of our rigorous schedule. We have 30 minutes for this, 40 minutes for that, 30 minutes for this, 20 minutes for that, maybe 15 minutes there. So coming in and helping showcase those skills that our community has, and also teaching those skills to our kids and exposing them more would go a long way.
Oh, this is so wonderful. And let me indicate to you that the term that the two of you caused me to think of just now is academic ambassadors. And what I mean by that is the world needs to hear what you are saying, reminding those who are with us that you're hearing the voices of Rosalind Bruce, second grade teacher, Brookside; Ed Bell, seventh grade teacher, Raytown Junior. Let me ask you to dispel a myth or two. There are people who talk about urban education in ways that would make it seem impossible to teach, quote, our children, unquote. Therefore, how wonderful, how magnificent you must be. Will you please teach us this particular Saturday afternoon about those positives that exist in what is referred to as the urban education community? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me ask Rosalind Bruce first, and then Brother Bell and Sister Bruce. What are things that make you optimistic, and tell us about some positives?
What makes me optimistic is just seeing my kids every day and seeing the changes that happen with them every day. I tell my kids all the time that change doesn't happen overnight, and I don't expect for them to change overnight. But I do expect for them to listen. I do expect for them to take heed to what people are saying, even though there are second graders, even though they're 7, 8 years old. They have a lot to say, and they have to learn how to speak up for themselves, and also how to speak up for themselves, not just yelling and screaming, not hitting, not cursing. I say, whatever you see people doing out there on the streets or in your family, that's not what it's all about.
Wow.
All right. So encouraging them to be more than what they're exposed to, showing them that, hey, my kids all know that I live 5 to 10 minutes away from all of them. And they can always come to my house. They always try to come to my house, but they all know and understand that everything I do for them.
That's quite all right. There was a little bit of a freeze for a moment, but as we continue, we're going to come back to that, because these are such important points. And Brother Bell, I see you nodding your head.
I teach my children
that okay.
Just because you are who you are, they're not going to respect you just because of who you are. You got to show respect to get respect. And that's any adult, any child. Everyone needs to show respect. And if we can do that, we will be doing a lot of the work already. and everything else will be easy.
Let me tell you something. Let's see what you did, Terry Barnes. This is so magnificent. Brother Bell is hearing from Sister Bruce, who needs to be in his life right now because she's got second graders. What she's doing with those second graders can make Brother Bell's life real easy by the time they get to him. They were in the same school. But please, Brother Bell, go right ahead.
Oh, I mean, that's facts. And Miss Bruce, I definitely salute and applaud what you're doing, your approaches and your tenacity, right? You are very passionate about it. Getting to the spirit of the question, I think Brother Boyd is asking, I think Miss Bruce definitely touched on it in one word, and that's respect. I would even include mutual respect. You know, there's just been a societal shift in terms of who we admire, what we expect, what we respect, what we aspire to. And the most common denominator of any field, of any space, of any area of success is that there's a teacher somewhere. And you can't be anything without a teacher.
Thank you.
Right. And so I think if we can get back to the core level of appreciation for that dynamic, that mechanism, right, I think that'll go a long way. But also, I think we got to find ways to communicate the significance of being a lifelong learner. And, you know, we see it in an entrepreneurial fashion when people are, you know, getting on YouTube to learn how to do something to make some money or to get some followers or something like that. I mean, that's still a learning process. It's still an educational endeavor. And I think we have to really work to rebrand, repackage, remarketing what lifelong learning looks like. And then be open to the myriad of ways and venues and formats in which learning can occur. I can tell you as an English teacher and as a writer myself, I'm a very tactile person. I like to write. But what COVID and remote learning and being adapting showed is that you have to have mechanisms, multiple mechanisms and way to communicate. And so now my classrooms are paperless, right? Everything is electronic, everything is done. If God forbid that we have to shut down and go back, you know, to remote learning, we don't have to break the continuity of our educational practices. That was me having to learn how to teach differently in a better way. So there has to be a continuing modeling of what that looks like. It can never be a point of, well, I'm this and you do that, and so you just do that. There has to be a sincere and deliberate and intentional continuous engagement that promotes lifelong learning on both sides.
This is so wonderful. Sister Barnes, it appeared to me that you were nodding in agreement with something or had something to say. Please just come right on in, because I know that we're on your schedule and it's so kind of you to come to us from the airport, but please go right ahead.
You know, I was shaking my head in agreement because what Ed Bell talked about, this level of respect, and I'm specifically thinking about Black boys, and I'm thinking about his nomination, which I don't think he's even heard yet, and I don't have it in front of me, but what I remember about the nomination that just took us over, it talked about him being able to connect to this kid, a kid who was otherwise not interested in school, but whatever Mr. Bell was doing in the classroom connected with this kid. And I really think that's important. When children feel respected and they feel like you have a level of love for them, they will work for you. And I think that too often, and it may be cultural. I would love to hear from them how important they think the cultural piece of it is. You know, we keep hearing statistics about if you have a Black teacher, I think it's by the 4th grade, your chances of graduation go up 40%. It's a significant number. But in understanding our people, our ways, the way we think about things, how important those connections are, not only to the children, but being able to access the parent. I heard both Ms. Rosalind and Ed talk about the relationship with the parent. And from my years at the Du Bois Learning Center, I know that is true. I don't have a single education qualification in my background, but because I cared about those kids, parents would tell me all kind of things about their family lives, about what they were concerned about in the classroom.
Yes.
And so I know it has something to do with they have to believe that you care about them to make that additional connection.
Well, this is so wonderful that you brought up that culture. And by the way, Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, in his second book, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, book 2, talked about fourth grade syndrome. And then when I hear Brother Bell, I started teaching 7th and 8th grade science in 1964, Brother Bell. You remember 64, right? But let me say to you, and this is a true story, when I was teaching, it was pretty much didactic. We could talk to you for 4 days and then give you a quiz on Friday. If you passed the quiz, you were smart, and if you didn't pass it, you weren't. Now, we really subjected our young people to some dastardly deeds as it was, because Mortimer Adler with the Paideia program and multiple intelligences was not even respected until the mid-1970s. So if we had a child, particularly a boy who was kinesthetic and wanted to move around, that was a bad boy. We had children who in the back of the room were considered to be less than smart simply because they couldn't see the board and we didn't know they were visual learners. We have young people who are auditory that we don't want to talk to, but I'm sorry for going on. And by the way, Sister Barnes says you have to move around. If there's a point at which you need to interrupt or leave or something like that, just let us know. But forgive me, both Rosalind Bruce and Ed Bell, for distorting Sister Barnes' question. Let's go back. She's talking about the culture and how you regard what is important where that is concerned with our children. And by the way, whomever you teach, they are all our children. Right. But please, either one, speak to that.
We'll let ladies go first. Go ahead, Ms. Bruce.
Okay. For me, culture is like, it is one of the top things that is needed in the classroom. And you have to respect culture. And I teach my kids that everyone, even though we are all African-American or Hispanic, we don't all have the same culture. And to learn how to respect each other's culture is learning to have respect for ourselves. And if we can respect each other's cultures, there's nothing that we can't learn. And for me, like talking to like some of my coworkers, they don't understand because they don't live within these boundaries, in the school boundaries. So when you're coming from Lee Summit, Blue Springs and everything, and then you're coming down here in the inner city, in the urban area, and you're teaching, you're looking at these kids differently. No, they're no different than those kids that are out there. Their culture is different. Their area where they live are different, but their kids are still the same. And to respect their culture. That's why I like the fact that at our school, we have in one of our PDs where it's going to make our teachers, especially our teachers that don't live within in the inner city, they have to get on the metro. They're going to have to travel around the city. They're going to have to get around. They're going to have to go into these stores and try to go grocery shopping in these stores where our city is basically a food desert. Like they're going to have to try and find those things. So getting our teachers to understand that your culture is no different than theirs is just culture is culture. Everyone's culture, yes, is different, but at the bottom of it all, we are still all the same. We're all human beings. We all are looking to be respected. We all are looking to be treated fairly. And we all deserve an education, a quality education, not quantity, but quality education.
The voice of Rosalind Bruce, second grade, Brookside, and here's Brother Ed Bell.
First of all, 1,000% agree. Let me speak at it from this point. Words have two different types of meanings. There's a connotation, then there's a denotation, right? Denotation, there's that literal meaning. And I think that's exactly what Rosalind is speaking about. I definitely agree with that, right? In terms of, cultures not being monolithic. African Americans are spectrum, European Americans are spectrum, Hispanic Americans are spectrum, right? And so that definitely needs to be there. I want to take it in a more connotative angle and talk about culture in terms of how you do what you do. And I think we need to really work collectively to establish cultures of learning, cultures of academia, cultures of respect, cultures of collaboration. right? So that means regardless of wherever you come from, wherever you are, we hold true to the principles that Ms. Bruce just spoke of, and that is everybody wants to be respected, everybody wants to be protected, everybody wants to have an opportunity to have a sense of upward mobility, whatever that looks like for them, right? And so we need to have cultures of collaboration, cultures of continued learning, cultures of acceptance where people can come in and feel safe to have a real exchange. Communication has a sender and a receiver, and both of those positions are fluid. And so culture, positive culture, needs to reinforce the fluidity of those exchanges. There needs to be a space in which I can come and learn and grow from you, and there has to be a space where you can come in and grow and learn from me. And you see that exemplified in the way that Ms. Bruce's schools talked about doing professional development, immersing educators into students' living environment and allowing them to see what it means to be a student from that lens. I think, you know, we need to do that as colleagues to be able to see where other people are coming from in terms of approach, in terms of how you reason and reconcile. But then again, there has to be the common denominator of respect, of collaboration, of safety, right? That makes the culture viable, that allows the culture to be partaken of, and allow the culture to have an impact on student learning wherever they may be.
Mr. Ed Bell, seventh grade teacher at Raytown. And again, Sister Barnes, just let us know when you have a comment and or a question. I have this as it relates to 17 years, 21 years. When I talk about my teaching, in all the time that I taught, 7th and 8th grade, I never had to deal with remote learning. I never had to deal with the technology with which you must grapple on a daily basis. I better start with Rosalind Bruce. It might have hit a nerve, but please, Sister Bruce, tell me about how things have changed.
Remote learning, that right there, that was different because even though kids have always, this generation has been exposed. Me personally, I think they've been overexposed to technology, but they've been so exposed to technology to the point where it made it hard for them to be able to learn remotely. Like they didn't understand that they were in school, what the expectations were. It was even hard for the parents to understand and respect the school hours. But it also came with, it was like one of those bittersweet things where even though it was bitterly sweet, bitter, very, very bitter teaching online, it was kind of sweet because now the parents are actually seeing and understanding what we teachers go through every day in a classroom trying to teach your child. And we're always telling Sean to sit down like every 10 seconds because of his ADHD, and you're doing it at home. Something needs to click. I need you to start making those connections. And with my kids, my school allowed me to loop up with my first graders up to second grade. So, because I told them I wanted to see what I did for them remotely was actually beneficial. So when I got into the classroom this year, I had 15 kids that were mine that were remotely. And then I had 15 additional kids added to those children. And I still came out on top. My children still came out on top, and my family still came out on top. So I think when it comes to remote teaching and teaching virtually and everything, it depended on your standards for education, your standards that you have for your children and your families. It depends on your family's standards for their children and for them. And how can they all come together? I was successful. I think I was a success story, even though it drove me crazy because I was also online, in school online, taking 12 credits and also teaching online. I was never off a computer.
Ooh, my goodness.
We all were successful that year though. And it really truly takes, we got to go back to a village raising our children, because it really took everybody working together for us all to be successful.
this is, I go back to my term, academic ambassadors. You need to be sent across the nation to help teachers understand. Let me ask Brother Bell to elaborate.
In terms of the remote learning, Ms. Bruce is 1,000% correct. I think it did an awesome job, for lack of a better term, of highlighting the classroom management and behavioral components that impact learning and pedagogical practices in the classroom. For parents to see firsthand the difficulties associated with certain children being able to be still, to not fidget, to not look for distractors or detractors because they're not really engaged in the content. And again, think about this. It was very segmented because it was just their child. It wasn't their child influenced by 23 others in the classroom, juxtaposed to that one teacher. So I definitely agree with Ms. Bruce on that. But I think also too, as we talked about a little earlier, it made educators really think about their instructional delivery practices. You know, me teaching 8th grade English, middle school, you know, it really brought to light ways that I need to push my teaching practices to be accommodating to the lack of tactile activity. So in other words, as though I'm a writer and I may write and take notes, that opportunity may not be present. And so now my classrooms are paperless. In the event that we have to go back to remote learning or something is shut down, we've leveraged technology so we can actually manipulate answers on a page. We've taught students how to take a blank document and to construct a written document, as well as leveraging prescriptive technologies to help address gaps in students' learning. And when I say prescriptive, I want you to think about when you go to a pharmacy, you go to a doctor, they give you a prescription, they give you medicine that's just for you. We've been able to leverage technology in a way that addresses gaps that are just specific for that student, for that child, for that family. And so that we can cover a myriad of academic deficits and still move the class forward without having the students miss time or feel like they're being lagged, dealing with skills that other students may know. So technology has helped make education more, like I said, prescriptive and catering to individuals, but still allows a common platform for us to come to a common and collective space and still learn.
This is wonderful. Before I go to Sister Barnes, let me go to Louis George Walker, just to remind us that as we talk about technology in the classroom and the fact that Brother Walker's program emanates from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, let us not forget that he is the president of the Black Family Technology Awareness Association. And when we talk about reducing the digital divide, he is a practical example of precisely the things about which Sister Bruce and Brother Bell are talking. Brother Walker, did you want to comment on that?
Well, one of the things that we noticed during the pandemic was the fact that we in our community, and something that we started with back in 2004, was closing that digital divide, getting broadband internet into the homes. Because it's one thing to say you're going to have a lot of electronic or distant teaching and stuff, but in our communities, as in some rural communities, that's just not real possible. There was a lot of kids that you found out didn't have computers at home, didn't have broadband internet at home, and we're still trying to close that gap, which we were working on since 2004. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Some of the internet service providers now are talking about giving some lower rates for broadband internet in the inner city, because you still don't get to use the computer as much as some people do, so you're not going to be as fluent in it if you don't have the time on it. So that's something that we want to have the learning of using paper and pencil, but in this 2022 period, we also have to be very aware of coding, aware of how to use a computer, how to navigate on a computer and stuff. We can't divorce one from the other. You know, we've got to have some classroom. We've got to have some digital education, because it's just part of the world now. That's our opinion. It's up here.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I was getting ready to do was to ask Terry Barnes to remind us of contact information Brother Walker, before I do that, will you please give contact information for Black Family Technology Awareness Association? Sister Bruce, Brother Bell, they have robotics competitions. They have a number of things that might complement something you're doing in class. So first, Brother Walker, and then I'll go back to Sister Barnes for contact information.
Definitely. You can contact us at the Black Family Technology Awareness Association on Facebook. Our webpage is www.bftaa.org. And you can leave us a message on our phone, which is the number of the station here, 816-599-6893. That's going across the screen right now. And yes, we definitely like to work with kids. I just got through doing a podcast class with some seniors at Guadalupe High School. They had a 10-week session. The kids put together a podcast, and they did their presentations yesterday, and they said that they learned a lot on research and how to, put together a story and those type of things. So, yeah, we'd be glad to work with any schools or organizations to help in any way we can.
Thank you. And I wanted Sister Barnes to remind us how we can keep in touch with the NIA project. And I also want to give you an opportunity to speak to what we have been talking about or ask any questions you have.
So our contact information again is www.theniaprojectkc.org. We also have a Facebook page, same name, the NIA Project Kansas City, or you can find us under Black Women Get Fit on our Facebook page. And you can always call me at 816-673-9018. I think listening to Ms. Rosalind and Ed, the thing that's bouncing around in my head, because they've got answers. And so, in my head is thinking, and they don't seem unrealistic. How do we make sure those things are happening in our schools? And I know that's a much bigger conversation about how we actually integrate the things that our teachers are telling us that they need. How do we provide them the right support? How do we make sure they have a platform? How do we make sure their voices are being heard? And the things that they're saying that they do need in the classroom, if they're not happening, help us understand why those things aren't happening. And so I would like our organization to be a support for teachers to make sure their voices are heard and understand what platforms are in place to get these things implemented. Because we've been having these conversations a really, really long time. And I don't know that I really understand why we can't have more movement where we need to have that movement, because we've got the answers right here in 1 hour. We got some pretty significant answers to improving education.
Without a doubt. And interestingly enough, when I think about headlines, I'm not sure, Brother Walker, I'm going to really contemplate this over the next couple of hours, but I'm not sure that we will begin the 6 o'clock news, breaking news. Sister Bruce and Brother Bell were inspired by Sister Barnes to take us to where education ought to go. We don't get the positive publicity for things that are preventive where young people are concerned. So I could not agree more with Sister Barnes. We need opportunities to take this further than just the program. We are coming, as a matter of fact, to the end of that hour, and I want to give each an opportunity to say your closing remarks, make whatever appeal or however you might like. And I would like to do it in the order of Sister Bruce, Brother Bell, and then Sister Barnes to take us out before I offer my close. But here again, whatever you would like to say, Sister Rosalind, Bruce, thank you so much for being on this program today.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd, for having me. This isn't the first time I've been on a talk show with you. Very, very long time. But I would just like to say, I just want everyone to not forget that our children need love. They need support. They need people that care. They just want you to listen. And a lot of our kids that are acting out and have behavioral issues, they just want someone to listen to them. They just want someone to show that they care. They just want you to show up and show out for them. Know that you're there for them. And that's all of our babies need, is just for you to know that they are cared and that they are important to somebody.
I don't know if you go back to the Generation Rap years, but
yes,
a lot of people don't know that before that, my first radio program was titled Concerning Learning, and it was about education issues. But thank you so much for remembering, and please, Brother Bell, go right ahead.
Again, thank you for having us. Thank you for hosting a platform that is viable, that is robust, and that is meaningful, right? I think in terms of, if I had any message about education currently or going forward, is that there are a lot of positives that are occurring that should not be overlooked. But there are a lot more opportunities for those to increase and to be more robust and to be more impactful. And I think the key word is partnerships, right? Partnerships. When you look at a sports team, let's take basketball, for example, because, we're in the playoffs and that was my comfort zone as a ball player. There's 5 positions on the court. Now, you can have players who can do what other players do, and you have players who can do multiple things on the court or on the field, but there's still a role for everybody specifically to play on that team. And I think we have to make the roles, make people more aware of the various roles on the team. Education doesn't just involve a teacher. Education doesn't just involve building administration. When I was a building leader, everybody in my building was responsible for student outcomes. So that means I expected the custodial staff, the security staff, the auxiliary staff, stop and have a conversation with students. How's your grades? How's the homework? How's home? How are the things that have nothing to do with the classroom? How are they directly impacting and affecting the classroom? And how do we directly impact and affect those things so that the classroom can be okay? So partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. We have an awesome opportunity to leverage entrepreneurial approaches, which directly plant seeds in our students for an entrepreneurial space. Every student's not going to college, so we can use military, we can use labor and trade, we can use service industry programming to create pipelines of viable employment and ownership for those folks. And again, we also should be thinking about how to be civically minded and how do we take what we learn to make our communities better. And that requires partnerships.
Thank you so much. And as I ask Sister Barnes for her closing remarks, I just want to start out by saying, look what you did. This is wonderful this afternoon, but please go right ahead.
Well, you know what, Ed Bell, you said it. My commitment for our organization is partnerships. And I think that it's really important. I want to challenge other groups, not just on this show, but after we disconnect, we've got the summer to try to figure out how we can better hold up and support schools. And so we're going to be working on something to partner with churches in your community, organizations, just to make sure that every school has a group moving us all toward the same direction. I think partnerships is the answer for the moment right now.
Thank you all so very, very much. And we are right at the top of the hour. I was wondering, Brother Walker, if we might just take it to 5:36, something like that, but maybe not this time. Maybe we will just have to ask each of those with us today that they consent to coming back another time. I pray that you will.
Yes, sir.
And so much more I'd like to say, but it is time to close. And I always close with a message for students in honor of our veterans. And today's message goes like this. To students across the USA, your Stoots for Boots message for this day, May 21st. They praise you for your accomplishments by acclamation. You thank them for their praise at your graduation. This is for American students in honor of troops. They praise you for your accomplishments by acclamation. You thank them for their praise at your graduation. Thank you, Louis George Walker, for hosting all of us this afternoon. Thank you, Rosalind Bruce. Thank you, Ed Bell. And a very special thank you for pulling us all together to Lee Barnes. My name is Carl Boyd. Gracious God and wonderful Wanda. I'm on my way home.